Morning. I'm Andre. I'm 49 years old today. It's my birthday today. Thank you. Oh, very nice. Oh, please don't. No, you don't. It's good. It's all good. Thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. May the 4th, it is the coolest birthday in the calendar. The reason I told you it was my birthday is being 49, because I thought, well, what am I going to... I thought I'll just share with you my startup adventures since high school, which is a long time ago. And so my 10-minute talk is called It's Time to Save the F***ing World. And I apologize to the parents and the teachers. And I know that teenagers don't swear. I know because I have teenagers, and they're here today. But that's what it is, and it's on the T-shirt. So it's time to say that I never liked the world much. I spent most of my early high school years actually in the library playing Dungeons & Dragons. If you've seen Stranger Things, you'll know Dungeons & Dragons. That was for me, and that was for two reasons. One, because the kids who thought it was cool to beat me up every day couldn't do that in the library. And two, I just found that this fantasy world that I lived in my head, I found it vastly more inspiring and interesting than the real world. Till I got a girlfriend, that sort of balanced things up a bit, in fairness. But even so, I definitely left school and entered the real world, not with any sense of connectedness with people or the planet. This was like the late 80s, right? And into the 90s. And everybody just wanted to make something of themselves, to be something, to get successful, to get rich and to win. And we didn't give a lot of thought to the fact that if somebody's winning, there's almost always somebody else losing or something else losing. So I wanted to be a businessman, right? I wanted to forge an empire. I even had it engraved on a pen that I gave my father when we started our first business together. I dropped out of uni to start that business, and I was full of big dreams with big suits and bright colored ties because it was the 80s, and I was so sure of myself and so sure of success, and it failed spectacularly and brutally. My father went bankrupt, and I was left carrying a mountain of debt, a bad reputation, and a great deal of shame. And we in the startup world, we like to talk about failure as being cool. It's good, fail forwards, learn fast and start again. And I've failed 5 businesses and 3 careers in my life, and I can tell you that failure is not cool. It hurts. But it's not fatal, so it's not to be feared. So after that failure, I started searching, right? I was searching for something that felt right to me, something that excited me, something that I could be successful in. Over the next 10 years, I was an actor, I was a singer, a theatre producer, an events manager, but mostly I was unemployed and broke. As an actor, I worked on 4 out of 5 of Australia's worst TV shows at the time. That was something. I wasn't a particularly good actor. I didn't really love it, even though I think everybody thinks it's such a cool and amazing job and career. So for a while, I think I told myself that too. But in the end, I don't know, you want to do something that you're good at, I think. You want to do something you love for sure. But it's also good to be good at it. It's good to feel accomplished. I was a pretty good singer, quite loved that. Sang in a covers band called the One Hit Wonders. Back when covers bands were huge, they honestly were. We were like the tribute band for the bands that didn't have a tribute band. Started a couple of originals bands too, wrote and recorded a bunch of songs, but never really cracked it. Never got a record deal, just couldn't quite get there. And so at the age of sort of 27, 28, I found myself working in a call center in a wine company in Bondi called Cellar Masters. They used to employ out-of-work actors on the phones to sell wine because we were good at accents, and people bought wine from people with French and Italian accents. I like learning about wine, right? I like speaking about wine. I love tasting wine. Obviously, I made something of it later on, but this was a call center. I was 27. I didn't think it would ever turn into anything. I was just doing it to earn like $300 a week, to survive while I worked out what I wanted to do with my life. And I decided I wanted to be a director. I wanted to make films. So I quit my job at Cellar Masters, and I planned to take a year off and learn how to film and edit and direct, which would have been great if my soon-to-be wife hadn't also lost her job 3 days after we settled on the mortgage of our first house in Sydney, right? So I needed to make some money fast. So instead of movies, I ended up making corporate videos for the wine industry. As it turned out, I became the wine video guy, and then I started making websites for wineries, and that was okay for a few years. I moved to Adelaide when my son, Callan, was born, Soon after my daughter Lulu was born, I had to slip that in. It's not written here, but she was that I didn't include her in the first draft. So yep, Lulu too. Anyway, set up a life here in Adelaide, but I wasn't building anything. Right? I was making stuff for other people, and that wasn't enough for me. So in 2006, I had this idea for a wine site, kind of like Google reviews for wine. And at the same time, my brother-in-law, Justin, had a similar idea for a wine site, sort of a Facebook for wine, if you can picture that. And so one Christmas Eve, we were sharing each other's brilliant ideas with much excitement and much red wine, and we decided to start a business together, a wine startup, a wine social site. Effectively, we were going to change the wine world. We called it Quaff. That's a squishy face moment. It didn't quite change the world. In fact, it didn't really work at all. So we tried a bunch of stuff, right? This was the beginning of social media and content sites. Facebook came out, YouTube came out, Instagram came out. We chased it all. When the wine social site didn't work, we tried a wine check-in app called the Great Australian Wine Adventure. When that didn't work, we bought a Kombi and traveled around the country filming a wine show, and none of them really worked, right? But we were starting to build a following, a community. We were just two youngish people in T-shirts and sneakers and occasional bad language talking about wine, and people like us, they found it refreshing. We weren't stuffy old men in suits and bow ties. In fact, we coined the phrase no bow ties and that's what we became known for. But we were broke because nobody was paying us money for any of our brilliant ideas. And after 4 years, we were very close to having to close the business. And that's a very short way to say it was emotionally traumatic. And then in 2011, Justin came into work, my garage, one day and said something along the lines of, what about a wine deal site? And I was like, you've got to be kidding. But he wasn't, so we talked about it. And I tried to come up with a way where selling wine wouldn't feel dirty and where I wouldn't feel like we were selling our soul. We called it Vino Mojo for about 3 days until we got filed a trademark breach lawsuit from a big wine company who had a wine called Mojo, so we changed our name to Vino Mofo, which I don't know if you know where the word mofo comes from, but it was a joke about them who were forcing us to change our name. Anyway, so we put it out there as Vino Mofo, and the joke stuck, and we launched in 2011, and it took off. Right, so it was a time when deal sites were just starting to take off, and we came in with our no bow ties and approach to wine, and everybody under the age of 40 dug it. And pretty soon, a lot of people over the age of 40 dug it too. And so we grew fast. I learnt to be a CEO. Within 5 years, we had 100 people on the team. In Melbourne and Adelaide, we'd sold a majority stake in the company to this company called Catch of the Day, and then we bought it back again. We'd raised $25 million in capital. We launched in New Zealand and Singapore, and we were a fast growth tech startup and with a great brand. We were successful, and I had done it finally, right? After nearly 20 years of trying, I had helped build something that was a success. And I'd been so driven for all that time. I think it was only then that I was properly able to take a breath and start thinking more about the world outside of myself, right? In fact, I was growing more and more concerned with the state of the world, right? Climate change, obviously, gender equality, racism, war and hunger and homelessness and all the anxiety and depression. And yeah, we started to do a bit of, awareness and fundraising, impact stuff with Vino Mofo, particularly around homelessness. And that was something. And sure, I went to climate strike marches, but I was also becoming more and more aware of the fact that I wasn't really doing anything about it. Sure, I was complaining at dinner parties about the government, all of the governments actually, except Finland and New Zealand. I was complaining about coal mining and how selfish and greedy and stupid our leaders were to have let things get this far and yet still do nothing about it. And yet, what was I doing? And I just hit this point in 2018 where I couldn't keep ignoring it. I couldn't just keep complaining about it at dinner parties. I couldn't keep expecting other people to fix it, right? I wanted to do something to help. I needed to do something to at least try. With all my strengths and the privilege I was born into as a white male with an upper middle class upbringing, good education, all I'd learnt, over the 25 odd years, the reputation I'd built, the connections, the experience I had, I wanted to be able to say to my kids that I at least tried to do something to help. So I left my job as CEO of Vino Mofo, and on the 35-minute walk from the boardroom before I quit to my Airbnb, an idea formed. And I wrote it down. I literally wrote, gather a small group of fiercely intelligent, passionate, aligned people and do something to help save the world. I didn't know what, but I knew I had to do something. So over the next 2 years, I gathered a small team. We tried a bunch of things. I tried helping big organizations find some purpose. We tried an online store that only sold ethical and sustainable things that were good for the world, like reusable coffee cups that were made from upcycled husks of coffee beans. My New Year's resolution, actually, 2018 to 2019, was to never again use a disposable coffee cup. And I was like opening up Pandora's box. Suddenly I started seeing all the waste we produce and throw away in the world. So we created this campaign called Year of the Planet, which we launched in 2020, where you pledge to make one small change in your life each month to live more sustainably. And we launched it, and we had 10,000 people from 44 countries join and do the stuff, and it was good, but it wasn't enough. But it struck me that there were plenty of people who cared about people and planet, right? We didn't need to waste all this energy convincing anyone that doesn't. There were enough people who acknowledged climate change, who believed in equality, who would love it if people weren't starving. They just weren't doing anything about it. And so we wanted to solve that problem. How do we empower the millions, billions of us who care about people and planet to act? And not just through signing petitions and making donations, which is great, but through direct actions that have measurable impact, right? Reducing carbon emissions and plastic waste and helping people out of hunger and poverty and empowering women and girls and creating equality and opportunity for everyone, that sort of action. And that's how this idea of Good Empire came about. We imagined this app where, like an ice bucket challenge, if you remember that, or an Earth Hour, was happening every single day, and millions of people were taking action and filming it and sharing it like viral TikTok challenges, but having impact toward the UN Sustainable Development Goals. An app that challenges us to level up as good humans and gamifies it. 17 missions for people and planet. Challenge, action, impact, level up. So that's what we're building. And it's exciting, and it's also scary, starting again, basically walking away from this successful company that I'd help build to start again alone. But I think this could be good for the world. You know, we could help millions of people out of hunger and poverty. We could help reduce millions of tons of CO2 and save billions of bits of plastic from our oceans. We could help change the way people live, the way they think. We could help those of us who are privileged, who have so much, come together and do something to help those that have less and create a more abundant and equitable and sustainable world. And that's the vision. Why me? Right? Who am I to dare to do this or try to do it? And I just, well, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? I just decided to put my hand up and take on responsibility to try and do something to help. I feel I owe it to the world. We all do, right? We need the people like me and you here in high school, right? So full of passion and wanting to do something, to make something of yourselves. We need you not to be thinking, how can I be the best in the world? But thinking, how can I be the best for the world? Because let's be honest, my parents' generation, boomers, they really things up, right? And my generation, Gen X, we haven't done much to help. So it's on you to fix what your parents and their parents have broken through greed and selfishness and the lack of understanding of the consequences of our actions, right? It's not fair, but it's on you. So step up, because if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? And I hope you all step up to the challenge, because it is time to save the world, and it's a world worth saving. Good luck. Thank you.
It is indeed a world worth saving. Andre, I could listen to you speak all day. Unfortunately, we got to get out because there's masterclasses later. Thank you so much. Give him another round of applause. It's time to save the fucking world. Someone else who knows a lot about being the change that you wish to see in the world is the incredible Sky Riggs. Now, Sky is a co-founder of Ripple. She founded YVote. She's been an Obama Young Leader. She was also a delegate at the G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance. Come on, up here, Sky. Give her a round of applause. Sky's going to tell us about being that change. And thank you so much, Sky. Over to you.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. I'm pretty pumped to be here today. I remember very vividly being in a room much like this at your age watching the person on stage and hearing the bio, and I was like, how do you even do that? And it really is the highlight. Like all of our other speakers have shared today, there's a lot of other moments in that journey. So I was thinking about, well, what can I share about being the change? And I was thinking about this moment about 16 months ago. I had it was just pre-COVID, and I was in Kuala Lumpur for a conference just like this. And I was sitting around with 3 new friends I had made. They were pretty awesome. Like, we were just sitting in a group, like circle of chairs, much like you guys have been doing. And I was listening to what they were doing. They were doing stuff like sustainable tourism in Indonesia and fighting for democracy in Myanmar and water sanitization in Laos. And we were actually talking about this topic of how do you create change? And specifically, how do you get the power that you need to create change? So we're pretty cool, obviously. And this 4th person walked over and pulled up his chair, and he was like, can I join your conversation? And at this point, my brain kind of went into meltdown, and I was trying to keep like my face straight because Barack Obama was sitting across from me. And I was like, what do you even say to Barack Obama? And, you know, this person that I look up to so much, he's been an incredible leader for our world. He knows a thing or two about creating change. And so I said something very profound. Obviously, in this moment, I said, we're talking about how to change stuff. What do you think? And thankfully he laughed, and actually there's a photo of him laughing and it makes it look like I'm telling jokes, which is great. But he, of course, had a beautiful and simple answer, which was, you move people. And it just in that moment took me out of this conference setting I was in, took me out of the fact I was in Kuala Lumpur, took me out of the fact that I was thinking about power and influence, back to where I got started, which isn't far from here. I grew up on Kangaroo Island. And actually growing up in a small community in South Australia had a profound impact on my understanding of the power of community. So growing up, and I'm still not any good at sport, but I played netball, I played basketball, I did tennis, I even did lawn bowls because I'm, again, very cool like that. And the whole point was that in a small community like that, I think there's an embedded value where you get involved in stuff, because if not enough people got involved, then there wouldn't even be enough teams to have a competition. There'd be no one to play against. So we would all get involved in all the sport, and we would work at the canteen, and our parents would umpire. And this was a value that was just deeply embedded in me. I didn't really think much about it. So then when I got a bit older, I came to Adelaide for high school, and I kind of carried this. I thought that this is just what everyone did. And so I was like always organising like fundraisers at school and really getting involved in the social justice issues I wanted. And one of the things I got involved with, I don't even know if it happens anymore. Do you guys do 40-hour famine? Like, hands up if you've done 40-hour famine. A few of you? Yep. So I ran the 40-hour famine at our school for a few years in a row. And one of the things that happened was we went on to become the single biggest fundraising group in Australia. And thinking back on this, we didn't look for 1 or 2 big, rich people to sponsor us or fund us. It took many, many individuals making that decision themselves to say, I'm going to take action. I'm going to get involved. And it was the power of many individuals grouping together, getting their classmates involved, getting more classes in each level, year level, and getting the whole school. And then if you think about, even if you got 50% of your schoolmates involved, the power of your extended networks, that's how we built influence and raised all this money, by getting lots of people to take action. So this is one of the kind of key things that I learned from day one growing up on Kangaroo Island, is the power of community and people moving together and with and for one another. But another thing I've learned is, alongside that, to make change, you have to create change. You have to deviate from what is the well-worn path. And we've heard a bit about that today, which is, I find so inspiring to and very reassuring. I'm like, yes, yes, keep doing it. Nicole and Jeanette were talking about linear paths at the beginning of the day, and I was like, oh yes. So in year 12, when I was leaving school, I felt like a little bit of the odd one out because my friends were signing up to do engineering or law or going back to the farm, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I don't feel like I'm a specialist at anything. I'm a bit of a generalist. One of my teachers, I remember distinctly saying to me in year 12, you're having a great year so far, Sky. Perhaps not academically, but so when I went to choose my uni subjects, I put politics at the top, and then I really liked the film Moulin Rouge, so I put costume design as my second option, which gives you an idea of how much direction I had. And I think creating change inherently means going against what is a dominant force, going against the status quo. And I've had to do a lot of this throughout my career, and I legitimately still get text messages from my mum sometimes being like, so what do you do? And it also reminded me when Jeanette was talking about the idea of taking young people like yourself over to San Francisco to visit companies like Airbnb, because a few years ago, I had the chance to help Airbnb launch a whole new social impact initiative across the Asia-Pacific region. And through this, I got to work with hundreds of nonprofits, everything from turtle rehabilitation in WA to walking with Indigenous elders into communities in Malaysia. But this is not a job I could have prepared for. Airbnb literally didn't even exist when I started university. And if I hadn't taken risk, if I hadn't followed my passions and my strengths, I wouldn't have built up this random skill set that gave me or put me in a position to be someone that would be a good candidate for that job. So I think it's these two things, the connectedness that you can find through community and small actions that push against the status quo, that create change, that held together, despite having a bit of a tension, can help society bend towards justice and create change. So while the idea of how do you be the change is nice, I think doing change is what is really, really important, and I hope something you're really taking away from today. You don't simply make change by being a school captain or founding something. It's about lots of small actions taken together that create bigger impact. So I think this is a really important thing because so often we talk about change in terms of leadership and in terms of action, but it's also about creating space for other people to be involved and about not shutting people out from your community, but looking for ways to bring them in. And the cool thing about growing up in a place like South Australia is you have outsized opportunity to do that. If you think about it, and I don't mean to freak you out, but you've got about 80,000 hours of work time in your career ahead of you. So imagine if you use those hours and combine your career with your purpose, with your passion, how much joy you can get out of that, but also how much impact you can create. We have so much power through our careers to shape the world we want to see. And then, as we've heard a little bit too, we have our civic system. We often take for granted this democracy that we have because we are so lucky that we have a strong democracy where we can challenge our leaders and we can make our voices heard. But so many young people don't get involved in these processes. If you use the 50 plus opportunities you have to vote at all levels of government, if you meet with your local representatives, you can start creating this change at a structural level as well as through the grassroots initiatives you run. And of course, it's not just yourself. It's the opportunity to bring your peers along with you. Because so often we feel so overwhelmed by the challenges we're facing. But as President Obama said, it's not about one of us being in the most powerful position. It's about us moving people together to create larger impact. So I feel like you have this amazing opportunity today where you're meeting these new people and you're going to meet people with shared passions, but the real opportunity is meeting people that have different strengths, different perspectives, and different experiences that you can combine so the sum of your parts becomes so much bigger. So as you head beyond this idea phase into the pitching phase, I really encourage you to think about when you're shaping your pitch, how do you create space for other people to join the solution that you're creating? Thank you.
Thank you,
Is that
Sky.
all good?
Beautiful.